The blade of desert wind sliced through the heat haze as rotors thundered in the background, echoing across the cracked tarmac. A woman stood alone by the Apaches, her silhouette framed against the rising dust. Black coveralls streaked with grease, cap low over her brow. They said she wasn't cleared to fly. They laughed, dismissed her. But they never looked past the surface, until she tied her hair up, and the mark on her neck caught the colonel's eye. A symbol not even war-hardened officers dared question. She hadn't come here to prove herself. She came because silence is often the only armor the world allows women like her. And yet, in that moment, with the sun burning down on Fort Lawson, the story of Zariah King, once erased, began to unfold again. No one called her captain, not anymore. Around base she was just the wrench, another black mechanic with calloused hands and grease under her nails. Some thought she was a civilian contractor. Others thought she was dumped there by admin reshuffling. She never corrected them. That was the point. Zariah moved like a ghost through the hangars, watchful, precise, always quiet. She kept her uniform zipped low against the heat, sleeves rolled up, tattoo hidden. Her name wasn't on any duty roster. Her flight hours were marked non-operational. No combat badge, no clearance. Just shadows and sealed files. And yet, when the hangar emptied, she'd work solo on birds most wouldn't touch. Apache models stripped to bone and wire. She handled them like they breathed. Some young officers passing by would scoff, maybe mumble a joke about wasted talent. They didn't watch how her fingers moved, how she calibrated systems like a surgeon tuning muscle and blood. Inside operations, screens flickered with flight schedules, weather reports, radar zones. The air felt too clean, too tight. Near the vending machines, a group of fresh flight grads lounged with smug faces, chewing gum and confidence. "That's her," one smirked, nodding toward the hallway as Zariah entered. "Keeps sniffing around the sim bay. Think she's trying to be one of us?" "Maintenance," another scoffed. "Probably just wipes the joysticks." Zariah didn't even glance their way. Her boots echoed down the corridor. She didn't need their permission to enter where she belonged. The sim chamber hissed open. Behind the control panel stood Major Collins, broad-shouldered, buzz-cut, skeptical to his bones. Lieutenant Briggs stood beside him, grinning as they rewatched his last flawless mock strafing run. Collins looked up. "Can I help you?" Zariah answered, calm. "Requesting sim time." Collins raised an eyebrow. "You're not scheduled, not even a trainee." "I'm qualified." "That's not what your file says." She didn't argue, just stood there, silent, steady. Collins turned to Briggs. The young pilot smirked. "Come on, sir, give her 2 minutes. Let's see if the janitor can fly." Collins hesitated, then nodded, half amused. "Fine. Solo scenario. Canyon terrain. 5 hostiles. No pre-brief. 2 minutes." Zariah stepped into the pod, door sealed behind her. Collins muttered to Briggs, "She won't even lift off." But the sim roared to life, and the Apache rose smooth, fluid, alive. Pitch. Yardage altitude. She flew like muscle memory, like the bird was part of her. The digital terrain blurred beneath her. Low flight, radar masked. On screen, 5 red targets lit up. She dropped into the valley, camouflaged by the canyon, invisible to sim radar. Collins's voice faded. "She's terrain masking?" Briggs blinked. "That's Tier 1 maneuvering. Where the hell'd she learn that?" A missile launched, dead hit. Then another. Then 3 more. All gone in 90 seconds. The screen faded to black. Zariah stepped out of the pod. No smirk, no swagger. Just purpose. No one said a word. But Collins stared at her neck, at the black mark half hidden under her collar. And that's when everything shifted. Because some tattoos aren't for show. They're proof you once flew above the silence, and made it back. And not everyone liked what that meant. Major Collins's smirk twisted slightly. "She won't get off the ground." But his voice barely landed before the simulation ignited around them. And the Apache? It moved. Not just airborne, but alive. Zariah's hands worked the controls like they were muscle and memory. Throttle, pitch, yaw. Everything adjusted with the kind of tactile instinct you couldn't fake. The terrain blurred by beneath her. Low altitude, canyon passes, hostile markers lighting up in red on the screen. Then she dropped. Straight into a narrow valley, radar masked by the terrain walls. Silence filled the control room. Collins leaned forward. She's terrain masking? Briggs blinked, stunned. That's Tier 1. That's Black Ops doctrine. Where the hell did she learn that? On screen, a missile locked. One target, gone. Second, third, direct hits. Surgical, 90 seconds. All hostiles eliminated. No errors, no panic, just deadly precision. Then, darkness. The screen went black, and as the pod hissed open, Zariah stepped out like it meant nothing. No high five. No need to prove she was better than anyone. Just that same composed stillness, as if she'd just finished tightening bolts on a turbine. Major Collins straightened. Where did you train? Zariah's voice didn't flinch. I didn't. And she walked. The door clicked shut behind her before anyone could think of something to say. It was only after the silence had settled that Briggs noticed the edge of something under her collar. Dark ink, nearly faded but unmistakable. A stylized mark, not decorative, not random. A symbol. Briggs's breath caught. Sir, that's not a civilian. Collins didn't answer. But later that night, his call went out to a secure line. No names, just rank, clearance, and coordinates. Because if that tattoo was real, Zariah King hadn't just flown in the past. She'd flown for someone the military didn't speak of out loud. The next morning, the desert sweltered like it had something to prove. Heat rose off the asphalt like mirages breaking apart. Inside the hangar, wrenches clinked against steel, echoing off hollow helicopter hulls. Grease-streaked technicians swarmed under rotors, tightening bolts, checking hydraulics. And among them, Zariah. She wore no rank, no badge, just navy blue coveralls zipped to mid-chest and tied at the waist. Her dark skin shimmered under the desert light, sweat dripping along her collarbone, a faint scar visible near her neck. Nobody asked where she came from. Nobody asked how she got here. They just assumed. One private called her grease monkey once. She hadn't even looked up. That day was supposed to be routine, until the base cracked open with a high-alert tone over the intercom. A scout team had gone dark near the mountain ridge. No radio, no GPS, just static and silence. And only 2 Apaches were still operational. Inside the chaos, the control room blurred with voices, boots pounding on concrete, orders shouting over radio chatter. And then, Colonel Dalton arrived. The kind of man who believed rules weren't guidelines, they were law. "Which bird is closest to flight ready?" he barked as he stormed into the hangar, boots hitting the ground like artillery. Zariah didn't wait. She wiped her hands and stepped forward, calm. "Tail 7 Delta's ready. She'll need balance adjustments for lift. Heat's pushing turbine threshold today." Dalton didn't even look at her. "I asked for an aircraft, not a damn opinion. Where's your supervisor?" "Off base till Wednesday. I'm senior tech on shift." "Well, you're not cleared for flight. Just prep the bird. I'll get someone who can actually fly it." Zariah said nothing, just turned back to the Apache and picked up her tablet. Systems, check. Hydraulics, green. Weapon sync, green. Engine diagnostics, clean. They argued behind the glass door. 2 warrant officers throwing names around. One hadn't passed live combat sim in months. The other had puked during heat drills. Zariah climbed into the cockpit. It was muscle memory again. Every switch, every readout, every vibration in the airframe. She read it like a second language. And just before she initiated the final sequence, her collar shifted. And that old ink, the one with the dagger and rotor blades, peeked through the edge of her skin. A passing tech stopped cold. He stared, blinking. "Ma'am, where'd you get that ink?" Zariah adjusted her collar casually. "Picked it up somewhere." "Why?" He didn't answer. He ran. Straight into Dalton's office, pushing past junior officers without knocking. 30 seconds later, the colonel returned. But this time, his face had changed. He looked at the powered-on Apache, then at the woman in the pilot seat, then down at the digital checklist signed with a call sign he hadn't seen in years. Echo 6. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. Zariah met his eyes, steady. "You needed a pilot. The bird's ready." Dalton started to speak, but a whisper from the tech behind him stopped him cold. "She flew under Colonel Draper. Black Zone Ops. That tattoo's real." Dalton paused, and everything got quiet. Even the rotors outside seemed to hold their breath. Zariah climbed into the cockpit like she'd never left it. Every motion quiet, instinctual, as if the Apache wasn't just a machine. It was memory. It was her. Outside, the officers kept bickering in the colonel's office. One hadn't flown outside a simulator in months. The other passed out last week during a desert drill. But they argued like their flight hours were medals, not numbers. Inside the aircraft, Zariah started the checklist herself. Hydraulics, green. Weapons, synced. Diagnostics, clean. The readouts glowed like they were relieved to see her hands again. Then her hand reached the auxiliary switch panel and paused. Her collar shifted. The ink beneath her skin surfaced again, just for a second. That same ghostly dagger framed by rotor blades, deliberate, stylized, unmistakable. And someone saw it. Staff Sergeant Boone, a logistics officer who usually stayed silent and unnoticed, stopped mid-stride. He stared like he was looking at a ghost that stepped out of his past. "Ma'am, where'd you get that ink?" Zariah didn't look up, just adjusted her collar. "Picked it up somewhere." "Why?" Boone didn't answer. He turned and sprinted into Colonel Dalton's office, pushing through without knocking. 30 seconds later, the hangar door burst open again. Dalton's expression was no longer dismissive. He looked like a man seeing a puzzle piece he hadn't known was missing. His eyes flicked from Zariah to the powered-up Apache, to the digital checklist, to the signature glowing at the top, Echo 6, a call sign thought long buried. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. Zariah didn't blink. "You needed a pilot. The bird's ready." Dalton opened his mouth to bark something, but Boone leaned in and whispered one name in his ear. Dalton's face changed. "You flew under Draper?" he asked, voice lower now. "Taji too?" Zariah didn't answer. She didn't need to. Dalton stared at her, then turned to the others on the floor. "Get in the damn air," he barked. "She's lead on this. Follow her bird." And just like that, the line of doubt cracked wide open. The rotors howled, turbines surging with heat. As Zariah lifted the collective, the Apache skids peeled off the concrete like wings returning to a body. The desert screamed around her, dust spiraling beneath the frame, kicking against hangar walls. She didn't hesitate, not once. Behind her, 2 co-pilots in the second bird scrambled to catch up. Their voices crackled through the commnet, nervous, rattled, uncertain. "Altitude check, 250. Torque at 72, confirm. Fuel reads, green, copy that." Zariah spoke once, calm, clipped. "Form on my 6, stagger flight. Radio's silent unless you see muzzle flashes." And that was it. She tilted forward, Apache nose dipping into the stretch of baked clay ahead. The bird surged, rotor discs slicing the sky, engines falling into that deep, hungry growl only combat pilots understand. 10 seconds in, she hit the first nav point. No corrections, no second guessing. Her cockpit was alive. Systems humming. Display indicators bathed in green. The Apache had been waiting years for this flight, and so had she. Below, the earth bled into motion. Sagebrush shredded in her slipstream at 150 knots. Outcrops of red rock rose like broken teeth ahead, guarding something. Somewhere beyond them, a recon Humvee had vanished mid-transmission. Signals intelligence pointed to 3 hostile vehicles converging fast. Command wanted eyes on. Zariah was going to give them more than that. At 50 feet above ground level, she rolled left, carving through sandstone spires like the Apache had claws. The chase bird fell behind. Its pilot panicked, nearly pulling vertical. "Easy," Zariah's voice cracked through. "Stay low, use the terrain." The chase pilot exhaled, then steadied. She'd snapped him from fear to focus in 4 words. She cleared the ridge. Smoke. Just a thin, rising column curling from the valley floor. The Humvee was half hidden under a crumbling ledge, mangled, quiet. No voices, no movement. But the layout was obvious. A trap. Narrow entry. Elevated flanks. Only one way out. A kill box. Zariah throttled back. Rotor thumps dropped low and heavy. The nose cannon swiveled slowly toward the high ground. Thermals blinked to life. Silhouettes emerged. 3, maybe 4. Hostile bodies drifting through scrub. Closing in on the wreck. Zariah's hand moved to the weapon system. The sky outside was silent, but inside her bird, judgment was loading. She opened a private channel. "Chase 1, orbit high right, cover my egress." I sweep a beat of silence. Then, "Copy. Echo 6, following your lead." The name hung there a second longer than needed. Echo 6, a name no one had dared use for years. And now she was back. Zariah cleared the final ridge, and there it was. Thin smoke twisted up from a shallow basin like a warning signal too late to matter. The recon Humvee lay fractured under a shale ledge, half swallowed by earth. No motion, no noise, no safe way in. The landing zone was a kill box, one way in, no clean way out. High ground on both sides, designed for slaughter. She throttled back. The Apache slowed, its rotors thudding deep and heavy like a heartbeat bracing for pain. Her cannon tilted, targeting the eastern ridge. She switched to thermal. Figures emerged. 3, maybe 4. Armed. Moving low and tight through desert scrub. Hunting. Zariah keyed into the private channel. "Chase 1, orbit high right. Cover my egress." I sweep. There was a pause. Then the reply came, quieter than before. "Copy. Echo 6. He didn't say it with doubt this time. He said it with respect. The name that once got her erased now got her followed. Zariah rolled the bird to port, kicked the tail, and dropped into the valley, low and fast. Rotor wash tore through the rising smoke, sending grit and ash swirling like a warning storm. On the ridge, enemy fighters scattered. One tripped over his own rifle as 30mm rounds shredded the shale behind him, close enough to burn rock. She swung left. 2 more bursts. Precise. Efficient. Ledges collapsed. Dust swallowed shadows. "Team Havoc, radio check." Her voice cut through the noise like a signal from another world. "Copy. Ghost knife," came the reply. Raspy, broken, but alive. 2 KIA. 1 walking wounded. Can't move. Tires shredded. "Sit tight," Zariah replied. "I've got you." She flared the Apache back into hover, steady, commanding. The ground peeled beneath her. Her side door swung open, and her crew chief jumped, darted through the dust storm toward the crushed Humvee under the echoing drum of rotors. Zariah's eyes didn't blink, didn't flinch, still locked on the thermal scope. 2 hostiles broke from cover, running for a truck at the valley mouth, machine gun mounted. They were aiming to pin them in. She rotated the cannon, locked in. 1, 2, 3 shots. The engine block of the technical exploded in a flower of dirt and smoke. The gunner vanished inside it. Silence returned. Then her crew chief's voice broke through the comms. "Package on board. Pop smoke." Purple haze bloomed behind them like resurrection. Zariah pulled back. Collective rising. The Apache launched vertical, torque spiking. She slipped between the ridges, back on escape vector. Max power. Every muscle knew the flight path before the screen could update. The chase bird fell in behind her, now carrying a wounded soldier clinging to shattered comms gear. They cleared the mountains in 5 minutes. Radio silence broken only by the medic's shallow updates. In the rear view of her mind, the ambush site smoldered behind them. Enemy transport burning beneath the sun. Ahead, Fort Lawson shimmered like an oasis. She let the chase helicopter land first, medics already sprinting across the hot pad. Zariah circled once, then came in slow, deliberate. The Apache touched down as soft as breath. Engines hummed into idle. Dust settled. Then they saw her. Mechanics paused. Pilots stepped closer. Infantry who hadn't left their quarters in days emerged. Colonel Dalton walked straight through them, helmet in hand. His face unreadable. Zariah unstrapped, climbed down the ladder, boots striking the tarmac with purpose. He stopped 2 steps away. Neither of them spoke. But his eyes landed on her collar. The mark beneath it, smeared with sweat and soot, still unmistakable. The dagger, the rotors. Dalton exhaled. "I flew with a ghost knife once," he said softly. "Hellmanned. 09. They saved my entire platoon." Zariah met his eyes. Finally. "That pilot taught me everything I know." Dalton nodded. Not out of duty, out of truth. Behind him, the murmurs were turning into a tide. The wrench wasn't a wrench. The ghost had returned, and she brought everyone home. Dalton raised his voice. "From this moment," he declared, "Captain Zariah King is reinstated to flight status. Lead Apache operations fall under her command." He scanned the crowd. "Anyone with objections can take it up with me." No one moved. No one breathed. Zariah exhaled, just once, as if years of silence left her lungs all at once. She looked back at her bird. Scarred, dusty, loyal. She placed a gloved hand on its side like greeting an old friend. The machine had given her air again. She'd given it purpose. Behind her, turbines spun up again, another bird prepping for departure. The base returned to life. But near the pad, time paused. Respect settled like dust. And in that stillness, no one saw her as just a mechanic anymore. She turned toward the hangar, helmet under one arm. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. The sky was open again. Zariah stood alone in the hangar again. The door rumbled shut behind her, sealing out the noise, the whispers, the stares. Her gloves were still on, the wrench still in her hand. She tapped it against her thigh twice, not from habit, but memory, the kind that never fully leaves. She reached for her tools, but her gaze drifted to the back wall. The old locker, reinforced, dust-covered, untouched for 8 years. She hesitated. Outside, the storm had just begun. Colonel Hargrave had finally arrived, the kind of man who measured worth in medals, not moments. His voice carved across the tarmac as he barked at Diaz and the others. "Who authorized that override?" Diaz stood straight. "She didn't override, sir. She corrected it. Saved the bird, actually." Hargrave didn't like that answer. Not because it was wrong, because it meant the rules had failed and someone outside the system hadn't. He stormed into the hangar, fury in his footsteps. "King!" Zariah was already standing there, spine straight, eyes calm, hands at her sides. "Sir," she said steady. "You disarmed the lockout?" "I did." "You don't have that authority." She stepped forward, stopping just short. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "Your checklist would have cooked the turbine. Ask your tech chief if you don't believe me." Hargrave's mouth twitched. "Excuse me? I wrote that checklist 12 years ago." He blinked. Then she moved to the side, picked up an old folder from beneath the workbench, edges folded, seal nearly faded, but still intact. She handed it to him. Inside, her original DD-214, honorable discharge, pilot certification, clearance for Black Zone Ops. A second page, half redacted, a CIA contractor record. Hargrave scanned it, jaw slack. "You're Ghost Pilot K-93. Zariah nodded once. "That's not possible. K-93 vanished." She lifted her collar slightly. The stylized raven ink just below her neck shimmered under fluorescent light. Wings folded, a binary string beneath it, not a tattoo, a scar of memory. Outside the hangar, the silence cracked. Word was spreading. Diaz was the first to re-enter. "Sir," he said carefully, "we checked. She's not in any public database." Hargrave didn't respond. He didn't have to. "She wasn't supposed to exist," he muttered. Then he turned back to her. "Why are you here?" Zariah exhaled slowly. "Because someone has to keep these birds flying. And I thought I could do it quietly. His voice softened. After what you did in Kandahar and Seoul, you just walked away? I didn't walk, she replied. I was shut down, scrubbed, erased. The silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt full. Of weight, of truth, of something long denied finally demanding breath. And then a call cracked through the radio. An Apache in training had been hit. Partial fire in the tail. Mayday was coming in, fast and real. No pilots available, no birds ready, except one. Zariah's. The one she had rebuilt, bolt by memory. She turned to Hargrave. Let me fly it. He paused. You're not cleared. She stepped forward. Neither is that bird. But I'm the only one who knows how she breathes. For a second, he stared. Then he handed her the helmet. The hangar doors opened wide. Sunlight flooded in, engines already hot. The Apache waiting, blade tips humming low like a pulse that never died. And for the first time in nearly a decade, Ghost Pilot K-93 walked back toward the sky. The rotors sliced open the air, roaring into life. Heat waves shimmered off the tarmac. Pilots, mechanics, officers, all stood frozen. Captain Jensen held a radio in his hand, but forgot to speak, forgot to breathe. Because what he was watching wasn't supposed to be possible. Zariah climbed down from the cockpit slowly. No swagger, no speech, just purpose. Like this was always where she belonged. Behind her, the Apache cooled. Dust settled, and everything changed. Lieutenant Morris, Jenkins. The men who had rolled their eyes earlier now stared like they were seeing someone rise from the dead. None of them dared speak. Then movement, deliberate, sharp. Colonel Hargrave, from the control tower, crossed the tarmac with 2 MPs trailing behind him. But they weren't there to arrest her. They were there because she had just rewritten the rules. He stopped in front of her. No salute, no orders. Just silence. You could have let him crash, he said quietly. Could have let them ignore you. Zariah didn't respond immediately. Her eyes drifted to the stunned flight crew. I don't fly for them, she said. I fly for the ones who need me to. She looked Hargrave in the eye. That pilot? He would have died out there. I wasn't going to watch it happen again. Again? He asked. Her hand rose to her neck, brushed back her collar. And there it was. The ink. The insignia. The ghosts of Anaconda. A unit long classified. Buried. Believed to be lost. Hargrave's breath caught. You flew with the 109th? She nodded. They were all lost. Except me. Behind them, a whisper passed through the air. Ghost of Anaconda. Zariah didn't flinch when the colonel saw the tattoo. He blinked once, stepped back. You flew with the 109th, he muttered. She finished the sentence for him. They were lost. Except me. Behind them, someone whispered what nobody had dared to say aloud until now. Ghost of Anaconda. And just like that, the atmosphere cracked open, like pressure breaking after years sealed inside. Silence shattered into murmurs, some in awe, some in disbelief, others thick with shame. Captain Jensen looked like he'd been court-martialed by fate itself. His face was drained, his pride a wreck on the tarmac. Is it true? Someone asked, voice hesitant. You took down a convoy in Kabul. No radar, no escort? Zariah didn't reply. She didn't need to. Hargrave raised his hand and cut through the noise. Captain Jensen. Jensen stiffened. Effective immediately. You're relieved of command, pending review. No one protested. The crew dispersed like a tide after a storm, parting with silent, heavy respect. Zariah turned back toward the hangar. But Hargrave wasn't done. King, he called. She paused. He hesitated, just a moment, then said what mattered. We need pilots, real ones, the kind who don't crack under fire. You're wasted under a wrench. She looked back at him, eyes fierce but controlled. I don't fly for glory, sir. You don't have to, he said. Just fly. They need you. Zariah didn't answer. But she didn't say no, either. Weeks passed. The base returned to routine. Flights resumed. Orders barked. Birds launched. But something had shifted in the air. In the hangars, whispers traveled from recruit to recruit, like folklore being reborn. They didn't call her Zariah anymore. They called her Echo, a name once buried in redacted reports and silenced testimonies. Now it moved through the barracks like gospel. She never asked for ceremony. Never wore the new wings they handed her. Didn't show up to briefings unless she had something important to say. But when she spoke, everyone listened. And the tattoo on her neck? No longer hidden. She didn't need to prove anything. Not anymore. Because the difference now wasn't her. It was them. One morning, a group of new pilots gathered outside the sim building, loud, overconfident, full of stories they'd never earned. One, a young lieutenant named Corwin, saw Zariah walking by, clipboard in hand, grease still streaked across her sleeves. He smirked. "You here to clean the vents, ma'am?" Zariah stopped. Looked at him. No sarcasm, no anger, just that steady calm that always said more than words. Then she gave him 4. "See you in airspace." 20 minutes later, Corwin entered the sim chamber, his laughter gone. And when he saw Echo 1 on the combat roster beside his, he didn't speak for the entire session, because he didn't make it past Phase 2. She did the impossible again. Maneuvers that shouldn't have worked in that airspace. A kill ratio the system hadn't recorded before. A live fire extraction simulation with one engine compromised, and she made it look like instinct. Outside, as Corwin exited pale and quiet, Zariah walked past him again, casually tossing a rag over her shoulder. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. But Hargrave was there, leaning against the railing, coffee in hand, watching. "Next time you see a mechanic," he said quietly to Corwin, "look at their hands." He took a sip. "Scars like that don't come from fixing engines." He looked at Zariah walking away. "They come from saving lives." That evening, just as the sun touched the edge of the world, Zariah stood alone on the tarmac. Her Apache rested in gold light, still, silent, almost reverent. She didn't climb in. She just stood there, watching, remembering, breathing. Then, from the shadows near the hangar, a figure emerged. Civilian, mid-30s, no insignia, no words. Zariah's posture shifted, just slightly. He smiled faintly. "Didn't think I'd find you here." She didn't turn. "Took you long enough." "I wasn't sure you were real, until I read the report," she exhaled. "I thought you died in Kandahar." He stepped forward. "I almost did. You got me out." Finally she turned, just enough for their eyes to meet. His voice softened. "You saved me." He looked away. "Now I work for the ones who almost forgot you. I made sure they won't again." Zariah glanced toward the jets parked under the floodlights. "You still fly?" He smiled. "Do you?" She didn't smile back. "Only when I have to." Then, after a pause, "Which is always." He didn't say another word, just nodded, and walked away. And Zariah remained, a lone silhouette on a stretch of burning concrete under a blinking tower light, not because she had something to prove, but because someone, somewhere, might need her again. And when they did, she'd be ready.